Amen. Thank you. What we're going to be doing right now is we're going to start with a video as we continue a month of gratitude of some of the pictures that you have answered and answering the question, I am thankful for. So we'll show this short video, and as we're doing that, I'm going to invite Graham Geib and Alan Jacobson to come forward for our conversation this morning. We'll continue this month of gratitude, and we'll continue to have our somewhat photo booth right there, if you'd like, and we invite you to continue that spiritual discipline and practice with us. Again, you can write it on a card if you prefer, or you can take a picture, and the photographer can take a picture of you in the card or just your hands if you're more comfortable. We're also printing out a lot of these pictures and putting them in the photo area as well as our chapel. So if you want to see some of the printed versions of these, we'll have those available too. Now, friends, if you're not used to what we do here, every once in a while we do what we call a non-traditional sermon. It's more of a discussion topic. And today we're talking about the theme of living with enough. So I've asked some friends to be here, and this is Graham Geib and Alan Jacobson. And Pastor Meredith will talk about her perspective, as well as we have a couple of folks who wrote in some responses to these two questions we'll be talking about. We're going to start each of these questions by showing a video from Shaw Crawford, and she wanted to share it in this way. So the first question is, what excites you about Bothell United Methodist Church? And here's what Shaw had to say.
Well, right now, everything about Bothell UMC is exciting me. Our energizing, inspirational pastors, our wonderful staff, the warm and loving people of this church family. But I think most of all right now, I'm excited because I'm seeing our church mission statement, becoming Christ in the community, is happening. The doors are open, our hearts are open, our minds are open, and we are receiving and enjoying all the wonderful new people we see at our church. We are reaching out through our Sunday night dinners. We are growing food for the hungry out in our church gardens. We have wonderful youth and children's programs. We have dolls being dressed by people for little children who will really appreciate this and wouldn't have this opportunity otherwise. We have our quilters doing wonderful things. We have our Bible study classes. I've been part of Bible study for 15 years in this church on Wednesday mornings. It's meant the world to me. But there are classes for all kinds of people, for people who are handicapped, for people who are new to the community and new to the language perhaps, that they can be helped. I just see our church just opening its hearts and its minds and welcoming people. And this just thrills me to see us out in the community. And I think we've done this more than we ever have before in this wonderful congregation.
you now is I'm going to go down the line so you know when you're going next. So Graham, you get to start us off here. How would you respond to this question?
So what excites me about this church is actually that stained glass image there. We come here all the time and we look at it, and I think it really serves, for me, it serves as a really nice metaphor for this church. And what I mean by that is this church is so strong. And I think that that's what excites me about it. Using sort of the metaphor of the tree, this church's roots and this church's history and this church's origins go back to the very beginnings of Bothell itself. And those roots continue to be present in our church. I mean, we have so many people who are here who have family connections to the origin of that church. So that strength and that history. And then you've got the trunk of the church as the congregation, everybody sort of working together. And it's a strong congregation and a strong trunk. And then you've got branches that are going around the church. And some of the branches have been there since the beginning of the tree. Some of those branches are strong and thick, and they're serving their purpose and still vibrant and active. And then you've got new branches coming off of the tree. And what excites me about that is that it creates the possibility of newness. It creates the possibility of starting a new branch off the tree. And to me, starting a new branch off of the tree won't in any way harm the tree itself. It's an opportunity for growth without impacting, without negatively affecting the strong branches that have been here and the trunk of the tree and the deep roots that are so firmly planted to hold us up.
Do you want to preach next week?
No, thank you.
Okay, just checking. All right. That's excellent. Thank you so much, Graham. We'll follow up in a little bit, but we'll get everyone a chance to talk. So, Alan, would you share, please?
Sure. I don't have an analogy like the tree, but much along the same things that one of the things that excites us about this church is, number one, it has a strong tradition. It has strong laity. It has strong staff members. But they don't stop there. It doesn't stop with the tradition. It doesn't stop with those strengths. It goes on, and what we see is a church that's really intentional about trying to fulfill its mission of becoming Christ in the community, looking at new ways to bring Christ into the community. Shar went through a number of examples, but just take even Sunday worship. We now have 3 different types of worship services that people can attend, and that really goes to opening up the church and trying to meet the needs of those in the community, and not just this is the way we've always done it. And I know it's probably very uncomfortable for some people to make those kind of changes, but what excites me is the desire to want to do that, because in order to grow, in order to become Christ in the community, one needs to find new ways, and a church needs to find new ways of being in mission to those outside of our walls here. And so that really excites me, is the potential, the openness to new ideas, and then some of the things that actually are in the church right now. One of the things that I really, when we first came here not too long ago, fell in love with was core, and the ability to have small groups meet outside of the church to really develop closer relationships. And so offering all those different types of opportunities is what excites me.
Thanks, Alan. Pastor Meredith, how would you respond, or do you want to share?
I have some words from 2 different members of our congregation. I can say names, right?
Yeah, please.
So Barb Donovan says this: I'm excited about a staff with energy, excitement, and ideas to grow our church. I am excited by the warmth and friendliness that greeted us when we first began attending and continues each week, the multitude of missions and activities that are available. There is something where everyone can fit in. Ann Cargill writes this: what excites me about Bothell UMC is the members' willingness to get involved, from the community kitchen, reconciliation work, special needs Sunday school meals for new parents, youth group, to a note from a member to let you know that they thought kindly about you and what you might be going through. That is what happened to me once when I really needed it. These things allow us to become interconnected and spread that interconnectedness out into the world.
How would you respond to the question yourself, Pastor M?
Oh, what excites me?
Yeah.
I keep saying the same thing. What excites me about Bothell UMC is that the sky's the limit, and that this is a church where people are deeply faithful and deeply hopeful and believe that if we show up with our whole selves, that God will work through us and transform the world. And I see that happening all the time, and I believe that that is possible for all churches. I haven't seen it in all churches. So it's really exciting to see that here for me.
One of the ways I respond to that, and I'll preach about this a bit more next week, is when we first came on board, Pastor Meredith and I were appointed together at the same time, July 1st of 2012. And when you get appointed to in your church as a pastor, you look at statistics because that's all you really have. Because I was living in Nashville, so we looked at our attendance numbers, our budget, and so many different things that we do. I mean, I thought, oh, there's so much great potential. There's so many great things that the church is doing. You know, the baby dolls were happening long before us. We've been here for over 127 years. The community kitchen, the community garden. There's just the countless things that could happen. I thought, wow, I got to be a part of this and see what exciting things we can do. And now, just almost a year and a half into this, what I've begun to realize is how unbelievably gifted the people in our many communities are. That's beyond just Bothell, the area, but we have Kenmore, Mill Creek, Linwood, Lake Forest Park, Shoreline, and even we get emails from people all around the world, literally, who see what we're doing online through social media and through our sermons and connecting in different ways. I was asked to talk to a group about 3 things I learned a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to this board of directors, and one of the things I shared with them was, I think that what we do naturally, and especially me, is I often underestimate those I talk to. And it's not on purpose. I always want to honor the next person, but if I'm not careful with my pride, who I am, and what I bring to the table, I don't give the other person enough time until I get to know them and their story of what they have to offer. A year and a half into ministry here, what excites me about Bothell UMC is a lot of you are unbelievably smart and gifted and serving in so many different ways. Did you know that one of my favorite people who is an active member of our church who we don't see very often on a Sunday is Verna Zander? And she's one of the key people who does the blessing of the dolls and makes sure that we get dolls at the best possible price. Now, Verna may not be here every Sunday morning, but she is so active, and she prays for us, and she sees our prayer chain, and she does what she does because it's a part of her calling. And the more I feel like I get to know your individual callings and what it means for us to be a community, the more I'm slowly beginning to understand the mosaic of faith that we are. The diversity and the uniqueness of understanding what does it mean to be a person of faith, growing and deepening our discipleship in a God who loves us individually. And to me, that's unbelievably exciting. Now let's go to the next question here. We're going to start with Char's video again. And the question is, for you, what does it mean to live with enough?
Well, I think we all go through times in our life when we go through difficulties. Whether it's the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, relationship problems, change in circumstances, accidents, illnesses. But what I see through all of this and all the ups and downs of life is that he never fails us. He's right there with us. And I think of the words of Paul in Philippians, I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therein to be content. And I think this is a gift of God. He doesn't promise us it'll always be easy, but he promises to be with us always. And because he is so faithful to me and to all of us, he is always there by our side to pick us up if we fall down and to encourage us and bring the people into our lives that can help us. And because he's so faithful to me, he says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I want to be faithful to him in my service, in my giving, in my caring, in all ways that I can please him and maybe bring a smile to his face.
Thanks, Cher, for sharing your answers with us as well, Char. So, Graham, would you like to start?
Yeah, for me, the question of what does it mean to live with enough has changed over time. For Betsy and I, when we were first married, it meant it was basically monetary. It was the concept of living within our means. And so for us, when we were sort of forming a union and forming a family and all of that stuff. It was an exploration of differentiating between wants and needs. Now, that's not to say that we never spent money on things that we wanted and only spent money on stuff we needed, but it was really about being intentional with how we spent our money so that we could be in a position to help people who needed it and be deliberate about making that a choice for how we spent our money, and rather than spending it on all of our wants and looking back and going, oh, sorry, we don't have any extra money to help people in need, that was an intentional part of how we categorized our living with enough. And for me now, we've got a family, our kids are growing a little bit. I mean, they're growing up a little bit. They're not grown. I don't know if are they ever grown? I don't have to ask other people. Are they ever grown?
That's a different topic.
Different topic, sorry.
It's okay.
But for me now, it's a function of, it's more an issue of time. So we've been sort of working within the differentiating between our wants and needs with money, but now it's a matter of time, and it's really easy to speed up in life and get busy and trying to do extra things and try and cram more things into the same amount of time, and it doesn't work for me. And so it's a matter of trying to find moments where I can slow down and be more intentional with my time so that I can connect with people in a different way relationally and be more in service with my time. And so for me, that's what it means. And I expect that, that will again continue to change over time as our kids grow up and our life changes, that the concept of living with enough will continue to change.
I just want to do a quick follow-up with that. So I was listening to the speaker just this weekend, and he said that one of the few times that time slows down for us as human beings is in times of great tragedy. Because in times of great tragedy, his theory is that everything that is less important gets pushed to the side, and what you really need to focus on, you have no choice but to focus on that. So just to follow up, what would you say are some examples of when time has slowed down for you in your experience?
Yeah, I have to say, I can't, fortunately, I'm very fortunate to say that I can't claim to have been through a great tragedy, what I would consider, but we have had some pretty serious times at the hospital with unexplained things going on, and pretty scary times with our daughters, both of them, and with my wife. And I will say that time slows down during those times. I mean, what the frivolous stuff that I was worrying about yesterday, when those things happen, poof, it goes away, right? And that's when, in those times when I've been through them personally, I really appreciate the people who have stepped up. And it's not the stuff that I have, it's not the appointments that I'm making, it's the people. And for me, when those times have happened for me, that's really when I've seen the importance of personal relationships in my community and in my family.
Thanks, Graham. Alan, how would you respond to the question?
So for me, living with enough has several different aspects. One means living simply, another means living with faith, and another means living with gratitude. So to me, living with enough means to be grateful for what God has given each one of us, and to be happy in that, and to celebrate those gifts. And then in terms of simplicity, it's to me, it's a lot about thinking about consequences. What does, when you go purchase something or when you go do something, what is the impact not just on yourself, but on others? So one example, and I used to be a heavy coffee drinker, I've since given it up, but we made a very intentional decision that the only kind of coffee we would buy is fair trade, shade-grown coffee, because that had a significant impact on other people and on the environment. So to me, living simply and living with enough, it's about the choices we make, and are we continue to be faithful or have the faith that God will provide for us in what we need. So again, it's kind of simplicity, faithfulness, generosity, and thinking about consequences.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate that. Pastor M?
Some words from Barb Donovan again. For me, living with enough is not wanting for anything more than I already have. Soon after receiving this question, I saw a quote that read, "Be thankful for what you have, and you will end up having more. If you concentrate on what you do not have, you will never, ever have enough. Which resonates with me. And I also think having enough or living with enough, not only in terms of money or in terms of time, but also in terms of who we are and trusting that we are enough and that God has given us the gifts to be who we are and that we are not everything we're going to be yet, but we're enough. This comes up a lot for me in parenting, right? You can always do more, you can always be more, you can always be a better parent. Sometimes what you are that day is enough, and that's okay. And there's blessing in that, and learning to see the blessing in that in the middle of striving to be more is something that's been important to me.
Thanks for sharing that. One thing I was thinking about with living enough from my perspective has been, this is my 10th year since I graduated from seminary, so full-time work, and up until about a year and a half ago, and really now, I feel like I've always looked on what my next career step would be, where I should be called. As pastors, we're itinerant, and we're called to the same church or a different church every year. It's a part of what we choose to be a part of. But for the first time ever in my life, I feel like I want to have a vision of baptizing your children and your children's children and your children's children. And I've never experienced that, if that makes sense. I've never experienced a desire to be a part of a community beyond just whatever this next appointment could be. And so living with enough is the peace of knowing this is where I am until I'm not, and ideally this is where I am for a long time. My wife and I talk about which high schools our girls would go to. You know, we're not going to go into that debate, that's a different sermon. But really, what does it mean to actually have peace with where I am? And I can say with you an open heart, it feels so good to talk to you and not to worry if the next year I'm going to be asking for a different appointment because that's what I want, or there's some career ladder or something. It's such a blessing to know that I get to serve here for as long as hopefully you want me here and as long as the calling fits. And it feels good. And it's the first time in my life I felt that kind of peace, and I feel it really deep inside. And so for me, that's one example of living with enough. We've got just a couple of minutes left. I'm going to open it up to anybody here. Do you have any other final thoughts about this? Alan gave us a great kind of litany of ideas of what it looks like to live with enough in practical ways. We've heard a great analogy. What would you all say to add this conversation or respond to each other? Let me phrase it this way. You're at some restaurant this afternoon, and the server says, "What'd you do this morning?" And aside from church, how would you respond to what we're doing here this morning? To somebody who doesn't know the church, who doesn't know our community at all. Why would you come up here and talk?
I would say, I got their back, right? I'm their pastor. I got their back.
We're literally surrounding you.
Yeah, we are. We are. I would say that we talked about how exciting it is to be part of this community as it grows and changes and strives to be and become Christ in the community. We're not there yet, right? We're becoming. And how grateful we are for who we already are, what God has already given us, and that we trust that is enough. That what we have is enough. We know we're not finished, but being grateful for where we are now is going to help us get where we're going.
Thank you. Last thoughts from anybody?
I just think it's really cool to learn more about people. And this is an opportunity to learn more about Alan and about Shar and what they think. And there's so many interesting people with great ideas and great thoughts in this church. I think it's a great opportunity to learn more about each other.
So, and again, just thinking about what we just were talking about, to me, sharing with somebody else, this is a place of great openness and great opportunities, and a place where people can feel safe and nurtured, and that's really enough. To come to a community that you can feel not just comfortable, but safe, and be able to come here as you are. As DJ, you start every Sunday with, "We're so glad that you come here regardless of how you come here." And I think to me, that's what enough means for a church, that we're open and we'll take you as you are, but we'll also help you on your journey.
Thank you so much. Let's pray. Loving and gracious God, thank you for Ann and for Barb Donovan and her husband, and for Alan Jacobson, and for Graham God, and for Pastor Meredith, and for this chance that we get to have a discussion about what it means to be excited about where we're serving here at Bothell UMC, and what it means to live with enough. Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity we get to meditate on your calling for each one of us, and for their willingness to share their story, and we give you thanks for this chance to worship you. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. before we do our next song here, I just want to give you a heads up. Thanks you so much, guys. Next week, we'll continue this sermon series on talking about living with enough, and I'll give you some updates on exciting things that you've been doing. For example, how many pounds have we given to HopeLink next week, this last year from our community garden? Or how many backpacks have we given to the high school across the street for us? And what have we been doing as a church and sharing what it means to return our gratitude? After that, on November the 24th, Pastor Meredith is going to share a great sermon about Thanksgiving and gratitude. And then starting December the 1st, believe it or not, it's Advent. And we're going to start a new sermon series which will continue and end on Christmas Eve, the Name of God series, as we explore the different names that we use for God, the implications, and some of the history for that. So we're going to dig quite a bit deeper into some of that theology and the naming of that through Hebrew and through the Greek language as well. So I hope that you join us for this. It'll be a great sermon series to invite your friends as well.